Our Mexican Grand Prix!
F1 driver rating. It's actually the Mexico City Grand Prix.
Actually. That's what will help you find. Not a lot of controversial incidents, Tommy, that could sway a grade one way or another, eh?
Yes, and a few that I've spotted watching the race back, as we do, of course, watching every single driver's race from start to finish.
The POV,
and
20 drivers, the full
genuinely,
race.
though, sometimes to get the incidents, the amount of times I've had to watch the start replay and be like looking at people at the back and like going frame by frame. That's how much effort we put in, so be nice and like the video.
Oh, yeah, Tommy is feeling sassy today. But if you do enjoy this driver rating series, please give it a thumbs up and let us know. That would be wonderful to see some positive comments. Right, let's dive into it and start where we always begin with Gabriele Bortoleto. Started the race in 16th, finished 10th. So for Gabriele Bortoleto, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. I think it was a very solid weekend. His move on Isaac Hadjar, tasty AF is what I'll say for that. Of course, had a poor qualifying, but made some good progress, it has to be said. He was on the decent strategy, where he was on the softs at the end. His exact strategy, for those wondering, he pitted on lap 37 from the mediums and then went all the way to the end on a fresh set of softs. But Bortoleto, scored a point, made a huge amount of progress, and the Hadjar move just was one of the probably the tastiest move of the whole Grand Prix. So you had the sort of more experienced drivers, they were wheel banging, they were cutting the grass. Not Bortoleto, 8 out of 10.
I have gone for an 8 out of 10.
Oh, we're going to go higher or lower there?
Lower.
Tommy?
It's close. It's between a 7 and 8. But
did I sell it to you? Was it going to be a 7?
Yeah, you did.
Oh.
I was very much choosing between the two. But now I look at it, at the end of the day, the race is where the big points are won. I know he's only got one, but he's come through the field. He's done a good job. I think he's done some lovely overtakes. And I've gone for an 8 out of 10. I think he's done a solid job. Obviously got beaten by his teammate in qualifying, which is a surprise, really. He's gone through this stage where maybe his form in qualifying in particular has dropped off a bit compared to Hülkenberg, but we kind of saw the Bortoleto of what we saw in the middle of the season, where he was really hyped up again and did a great job with some lovely overtakes.
The fans gave Gabriele a 7 out of 10. This video is sponsored by Car Vertical. This tool is an absolute lifesaver if you're looking to buy a used car. We've seen plenty of occasions in racing where after a driver has crashed their car, the chassis isn't quite right, even after repair. The same thing can be said about used cars. The sellers try to get away with it without you knowing. But not with Car Vertical by your side. Take a look at this report of this Lotus Elise. You can see the crash damage pictures as well as confirmation that it's been marked in the past as an insurance write-off. It's crucial information when buying a car. Car Vertical pulls data from hundreds of sources so that you don't have to. And if it comes back with no findings, you get credit back. So if you want peace of mind when buying a car, use code P1 for 20% off. The link will be in the description and pinned comment. Every car hides a story. Uncover it with Car Vertical. Nico Hülkenberg started the race in 13th, did not finish.
I have gone for a 6 out of 10 for Nico Hülkenberg. He's a very difficult driver to grade because he had basically a power unit issue on the formation lap, and it's hard because he did a decent qualifying, tumbled down the order, of course, at the start due to his issue, retired the car, took him to lap 26 to retire. But I'm not going to go straight down the middle just because I thought he put his car higher up than it should have been in qualifying, which I have to give him a little bit of credit for, but hard to judge if it's any more than that because, of course, we didn't really get to see what he could do with a working car.
It is very hard because he DNF'd on lap 26 and didn't really even make it through to Q3. I'm going to go for a 5 out of 10 for Nico Hülkenberg. Look, the power unit issue was not ideal, and of course that's what was the cause of the retirement. It's not like he took some headlines with qualifying. Of course, he did beat Gabriel Bortoleto, but I think it's maybe more on Bortoleto slipping up slightly there and not making it a higher placement on the grid. So I'm going to go for a 5. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Tommy, with that one. The fans gave him a 5 as well. Alex Albon started the race in 17th, finished 12th. Alex Albon is going to receive a 5 out of 10. Poor qualifying once again from Alex, which put him on the back foot. And from there, it's just damage limitation or trying desperately to score a point from a difficult position. Started on the hards, which was not the right strategy call, but still wasn't too close to scoring points in the end. So for me, yeah, again, kind of quite an anonymous weekend for Alex Albon. Yes, he made some good progress, finished 12th, but it feels like there's more to be gained, especially when you see Carlos up there in, well, he literally was in Q3, wasn't he, Carlos? So There was a lot more pace in that Williams, but Alex didn't show it this weekend. 5 out of 10. And sorry, Alex, because I know that sometimes you say it really sorry. 5 out of 10.
I gone for a 5 out of 10 as well for Alex Albon. A very meh weekend, I think, summarises it. That's why I've gone straight down the middle with a 5. Carlos in qualifying showed that the pace was there for Williams to deliver. But yeah, he was just a bit unspectacular, really. I know he got a bit sassy on the radio again and saying that it's the worst strategy he's ever had. Made it through to 12th, but nothing to shout about, so I've gone for a 5.
The fans gave Alex a 5 out of 10 as well. Carlos Sainz started the race in 12th, but actually got up to 7th, had a 5-place grid penalty, and did not finish, but was classified P17 because he completed over 90% of the race.
I have gone for a 4 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz, and this is the driver that I mentioned in the intro that I scrutinised and watched the the intro because there were no onboards from him, so I basically had to freeze frame lap 1 from the helicopter cam and really watch his car. Carlos, it's very much a what could have been. He had a brilliant qualifying to be up there in P7, of course. Not going to downgrade him for the penalty that he got in the previous race, because that's last week's mistake. But I actually think his turn 1 move was a big error on his part. I watched it back. He collides with Lawson. He actually makes the corner absolutely fine, and the Haas in front of him has lost control a little bit. I believe it's well, of course it would have been Ocon. And he basically has a bit of a moment, the Haas, and rather than Carlos slowing down and still continuing the corner, he just immediately bails and does the classic Mexico, I'm going to just go for the grass, and in doing so just whacks straight into Lawson and doesn't see him. That of course damages his tyre and the sensor, which basically gave him so much trouble for the rest of the race.
I'm also going to give a 4 out of 10 because I firmly believe that is Carlos's fault. The contact that he had with Lawson, which ruined Lawson's race with the front wing damage that he had. And yeah, he jolts to the left. He absolutely jolts to the left. He wants to bail. He probably doesn't see Lawson. I think it's very much just a case of not really checking, not expecting probably, and fair enough, not expecting another driver to your left also bailing across the grass. But it's his responsibility to not do that. Yes, it's a racing incident and this, that and the other, but it's affected both of their races. And of course, the sensor problems and the speeding in the pit lane and everything else came from that. And also, of course, spinning out of the race. So can you really give him any higher than a 4? The fans gave Carlos a 5. Isaac Hadjar started the race in 8th, finished 13th. For Hadjar, I am going to give him a 6 out of 10. Phenomenal qualifying. Really good job from Isaac. I genuinely believe that the Racing Bulls has fallen off a cliff now in terms of race pace towards the end of this season. Perhaps, again, the sort of tools down, not bothering with kind of pushing the car forward at this stage of the season. Didn't have any fresh softs to start the race on, or new tyres, sorry, because he qualified 8th, and he said himself it was enough to make the difference. He was making progress, but they're always a bit slower in the race than qualifying. So I have to give a nod of approval with the 6 out of 10 for Isaac for what he managed in qualifying, but a very mediocre race, it has to be said.
Yep, I've gone for a 6 out of 10 as well for Hadjar. His qualifying was brilliant, one of the stars of qualifying for sure, because I do think, the Racing Bulls isn't the car that we've maybe seen for much of the season, but he made a mistake on lap 1 where he ran wide, lost a place to Tsunoda, Piastri, Ocon, and that basically kind of doomed any chance of points. But I do have to give him a 6 because of a great qualifying, much ahead of his teammate, who we'll talk about next. But 6 out of 10 for Hadjar.
The fans gave Hadjar a 5 out of 10. Liam Lawson started the race in 15th, did not finish.
I've gone for a 5 for Liam Lawson. As I mentioned earlier, his race was kind of ruined with Carlos Sainz, who I'm putting more blame on here. At the start, Lawson was just doing, he'd already made the call to bail, and obviously wouldn't have expected Sainz to make a very last-minute jolt, which damaged his front wing, of course. That led to the quite crazy scenes of the marshals going on because he was on his own at the back. But unfortunately, too much damage to continue, so straight down the middle for a 5.
A 5 out of 10 is what I will give Lawson as well. In 9 laps, can you really do much more than that? It wasn't his fault that the contact, as you say, Tommy, he was just bailing as well, and Carlos just didn't check his left-hand mirror, and then, out of the race very quickly. So a 5 out of 10 from me. The fans gave him a 5 as well. Oliver Behrman started the race in 9th, finished 4th. Difficult grade, this one. Didn't get a podium after running in P3 for so long.
I love the way we always make this joke for people who did really well.
10 out of 10 for Ollie Behrman. What a phenomenal race from the rookie. Didn't look like a rookie, if I'm being completely honest with you, on Sunday. He mixed it with the big boys and he looked like he belonged there. The fact that he was almost going side by side with Verstappen after that double right-hander into the next left, where notoriously last year, of course, Norris and Verstappen had that little incident. Ollie was not scared. He braked late and he stayed ahead. He really could not have done much more. The strategy, I think, was the correct way for Haas. And he utilised every single corner of the entire race, genuinely. I don't think he put a foot wrong. So it has to be a 10 out of 10 for Ollie.
Yeah, gone for a 10 out of 10 for Ollie Behrman, of course. If we had a P1 driver ratings bingo sheet, one of the things on there would be, maybe we used our 11 for Nico Hülkenberg too early. And we've said it about many drivers that got midfield podiums since.
Well, it's not a podium, mate. Just
No, sorry, but really good drives because
it
Ollie
is in our
Behrman,
hearts a podium, but it wasn't.
It is superb. It's a brilliant drive. The fact that he fought from a lower position, still obviously qualified well in 9th, but it was all that moment of madness that he took amazing advantage of with the Verstappen and the Hamilton incident, because of course he passed Russell and Verstappen in that moment, and then of course benefited from Hamilton's penalty. So really good. It would have been amazing to see him on the podium. It's always a shame when someone that's not been on the podium for, or even a team that's not been on the podium for, before finish in P4. But still, amazing points for Haas, and Ollie Behrman rockets up the standings in the championship now.
Well done, 10 out of 10. The fans, unsurprisingly, gave him a 10 as well. Esteban Ocon started the race in 11th, finished 9th.
I have gone for an 8 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. A solid drive that obviously, of course, is overshadowed by what Ollie Behrman did, but still a good performance for Ocon to grab some more points. He's had a difficult time of late, but of course, so it's a good grade putting a car that I don't think Haas were like unbelievable this weekend or anything like that. I think they've both done a very solid job. Obviously, Ollie Behrman doing an exceptional job. But Ocon still deserves a good amount of credit, so I've gone for an 8.
Yeah, I was deciding whether a 7 or 8 was applicable for Ocon, but I think he was on the worst strategy, so I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. Yeah, Ocon did a pretty good job considering those mediums were terrible, and still miles off his teammate when you look at the actual times. But he was, of course, there was traffic and things like that. But Ocon still did a good job. Would like for SD to step it up a little bit now, because Ollie Behrman is certainly taking the headlines now in that team, and has been for a few races now, it has to be said. So it was a better qualifying though for Ocon, starting in 11th. We need to see a little bit more of that, I think, because I don't think we would have expected, if we look back to the start of the season where Ocon was getting some incredible positions, now being in going into round 20, going into round 20 next time, you wouldn't be thinking that Ollie Behrman would have more points than Esteban Ocon, but here we are. The fans gave Ocon an 8 out of 10 as well. Franco Colapinto started the race in 20th, finished 16th. So 5 out of 10. It's the Formula 2 Grand Prix in Alpine. They finished merely tenths away from each other, the two Alpines, but they were an absolute mile away from anyone else. Now you have to put that down to the car, but I didn't see them the entire race. They were not shown. They didn't do anything. They were the slowest. I mean, Franco was, of course, 20th in qualifying.
We saw him getting lapped a couple of times.
Yeah, big up to Alpine getting lapped. Slowest qualifier and finished 16th. No disrespect to Colapinto. He's doing well in comparison to his fight with Gasly, but I'm not going to give Gasly a 10 out of 10 just because he beat him by, half a second or something. So it's a 5 out of 10 for Franco.
Yeah, I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Franco Colapinto as well. Certainly not his best race, but continues to match Gasly, which I think is still an impressive feat. I think he definitely deserves to be in that car next year. The way he's matched Gasly in these last races, and he was out qualifying Gasly, but maybe making a few silly errors here and there. But now he just seems a lot more consistent. If he can just kind of go these last 4 races without any kind of headline crashes and just be there on the back of Gasly or occasionally beating him, I don't think you can ask much more of him, really, from the kind of pressure that he's had on him jumping in the middle of the season.
It's almost a good thing for Franco, the fact that the Alpine is terrible, not competitive in the slightest, but it's giving Franco mileage. It's just getting him embedded in Formula One a little bit more. I can't see it as a bad thing in some ways. I think Alpine, as you say, should give him the opportunity next year, and hopefully he just feels a little bit more like he belongs in Formula One.
I think I actually am at the point now where I think it'd be incredibly harsh for them to get rid of him, to be honest.
I think so as well. Because
if you're matching Gasly, Gasly's an experienced and he's a race-winning driver, so...
Exactly. The fans gave Franco a 5 as well. Pierre Gasly started the race in 18th, finished 15th.
The other F2 car is getting a 5 out of 10. Completely on their own. What could you say about them? The cars look very bright. That's about as much as you can say about the Alpines at the moment. And they show up on TV when they're getting lapped. But Gasly can't give him more than Colapinto because you kind of expect him to beat Colapinto anyway, but he's not completely trounced Colapinto. So it's a 5.
It's a 5 from me as well for Pierre. It's sad to see him so far at the back of the field, a literal race winner in Formula One. We know how talented he is and how he's put cars that don't belong in Q3 and in the sort of first few rows. So I can only imagine Gasly's motivation is quite low at the moment with the car he's being given. And for his sake, I'm sure he's hoping that Alpine next year actually create a car that isn't a dustbin. The fans gave Gasly a 5. Lance Stroll started the race in 19th, finished 14th. I'm going for a 4 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. He was the slow. He finished last of Formula One cars. Had a spin at the start, which was not ideal. He got beat by a
Formula 2 car actually in quali.
In quali he did, yes, which is even worse. But then in terms of the race, he beat Gasly comprehensively, but still finished last of the Formula One cars. Is what we're calling it. A very rubbish weekend, it has to be said, for Lance Stroll, unsurprisingly. And it's just one of those weekends once again for Lance. 4 out of 10.
I have gone for a 4 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. Yeah, spun at the start, just completely on his own while fighting. Pierre Gasly in his F2 car. And then, useless in qualifying as seemingly always. The streak that he's had against Alonso, you know what I think about Alonso, but like I think Esteban Ocon showed that Fernando Alonso is beatable, particularly at the age Fernando Alonso is now. It shouldn't be a case that he's getting completely whitewashed this much by him. It's absolutely insane.
Tommy not holding back. The fans gave Lance a 4 out of 10. Fernando Alonso started the race in 14th, did not finish.
I have gone for a 5 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. An average weekend, he got damaged at the start, obviously ended up retiring, but nothing to write home about. Quali wasn't particularly great. Obviously he beat Stroll, but that's not an achievement anymore. And it just completely forgettable race for Fernando Alonso. Even if he hadn't have DNF'd, I think it'd have just been a bit meh.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 as well for Fernando Alonso. A shame to see him so far down. Aston just not good at all around this circuit in comparison to some of the others. Hungary, you're thinking, wow, maybe Aston Martin have figured something out. Turns out not particularly. So he wasn't happy either, was Fernando, after the race. Very vocal with certain teams and drivers, just cutting corners and things like that. I cannot wait to see him if he is going to be racing next year, which we obviously expect. Him to just literally straight line turn 1 in the new car and take the lead for Aston Martin. The fans gave Fernando a 5 as well. Kimi Antonelli started the race in 6th, finished 6th. I have gone for a 7 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli. A good weekend, it has to be said. Nothing particularly special, especially, of course, when you factor in that Ollie Behrman is finishing P4. But that being said, of course, took advantage of the whole carnage that was going on with Russell, Verstappen, Hamilton to get ahead of his teammate. And then his teammate, of course, gave that position back once he couldn't make any progress. Yeah, pretty good in comparison to Russell, but not the greatest weekend in general for Mercedes, it has to be said. But yeah, Kimi doing a good job in comparison to George.
I am going to go for an 8 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli. I think it was a good performance from Kimi, obviously beating George in the race. They swapped, of course. I thought that was a very, very interesting dynamic that we saw. I think there's a lot more to it than we maybe even saw in the broadcast as well, because it sounds like the Mercedes kind of annoyed both their drivers in that whole swap situation. And it was very interesting that Kimi got straight on the radio and asked to swap back pretty much as soon as George couldn't overtake Ollie. Yes, there's a bit of rookie tax on here, and maybe because his form kind of dropped off in the middle. So I think beating George Russell and kind of matching him on pace and then beating him in the race due to getting ahead is no mean feat, because George is having a fantastic year and obviously a top driver. So I'll go for an 8.
The fans gave Kimi Antonelli a 7 out of 10. George Russell started the race in 4th, finished 7th.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for George Russell. Not a huge amount to shout about, but I don't think it's like a really bad performance, which is why I've gone for a 7 out of 10. Of course, we saw a side to George that we've not seen in terms of we've seen radio anger, but not at his own team, which was very interesting to see, to say the least. I understand why he feels aggrieved at the kind of start, even though I stand by the fact that it's just those guys knowing the rules and what you can get away with. Do I think it's fair? Not really. They are the rules, but I understand why you'd kind of be annoyed, because it does pose the question, like, why would you even try to just stay on the track now and just bail over the runoff and give the position back? So, gone for a 7 for George.
I've also gone for a 7 out of 10 for George Russell. Certain parts of the weekend better than his teammate Kimi, but of course Kimi ended up beating him. better qualifying, up in P4, and I think he was quite unlucky in the whole kerfuffle with Hamilton and Verstappen, pushed wide, which caused him to lose a couple of spots. He was quicker in the race, I think, as well than Antonelli, but couldn't get past because it wasn't a massive gap, so he could actually make the move, which is what Mercedes wanted him to do, which was pretty wild listening when you think that George might well be the team leader, but clearly not when they're telling him to dive down the inside of Kimi rather than team orders. Eventually the team orders happen, but he isn't able to make any inroads on Ollie Behrman, which is something I did not expect to be saying in this driver ratings, but I don't think you can really separate the two when you factor in all of that. The fans gave George a 6. Yuki Tsunoda started the race in 10th, finished 11th. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. I feel as though his weekend was a lot better than what is on paper and what we have seen in terms of the finish. First and foremost, we have to say he had a 12-second pit stop, which completely screwed him. And I was keeping an eye on his gaps to Verstappen when I think they were about 12, 13 seconds apart when he was in clean air, both of them on medium tyres. And his pace was good. His pace was really good in comparison to Max. Of course, Max was managing a bit of a flat spot on that medium tyre. But overall, I think he went quietly about his business and was on for a pretty decent result. And then Red Bull were like, I can't remember how to change tyres. So that screwed him massively to not even score 1 point after the race pace being pretty solid. I've gone for a 7 out of 10.
Yuki Tsunoda, I've gone for a 6 out of 10. I think it's I think he did better than the result suggests, for sure. The bad pit stop probably would have allowed him to get maybe a P9, P10, get some points, which wouldn't have looked so bad. P7's maybe a bit much for me personally, but I do think that...
P7 or 7 out of 10?
Sorry, 7 out of 10. P7
Tell me with numbers. Here he is.
Actually, P7 is what he said he would have got without the the mistake. But still, I think he's showing better signs, which is insane to say when he's so far off his teammate, but we just know that that's the second Red Bull.
The fans gave Yuki a 5 out of 10. Goodness gracious. Give that guy a break, guys. Max Verstappen started the race in 5th, finished 3rd.
This one's another difficult one for me personally. I'm going to go for a 9 out of 10. I find it tough between 8 and 9 personally, but the reason I've gone for a 9 is because he was so close to finishing second. I don't think the Red Bull should have really been finishing second. It's very Max Verstappen that he still manages to deliver a good performance when it feels like he's on the back foot. The reason I was deliberating an 8 is because I do think he pushed his luck at moments. Watching it back, I know I said this on the podcast about things like he gave the position back. Watching it back, I don't think he gave the position back. I think it just happened that Hamilton overtook him on the start because the way he was battling Hamilton did not look like someone that was actually giving him the position back. So that was, I think, more good fortune that he gave that position back to Hamilton. Whether he would have later in the race, of course, we don't know. And I think he was kind of maybe pushing his luck sometimes with, obviously like the dive bomb on Hamilton and banging wheels and things like that. Could have easily cost him because, of course, if he'd got a penalty, he's tumbling down the order and the championship is very much over. I've
gone for an 8 out of 10 for Max, and there's a couple of reasons why. Qualifying, P5, not the best of qualifying days, I would say, for Max. With the move on Hamilton, yes, there was no penalty given, but it was a scruffy move. It was an out-of-shape move, banging wheels with Hamilton, pushing him off the track. I can understand the just frustration from Hamilton fans, from potentially neutrals as well, how Max can get away with that and there be no penalty, especially when he then cuts the corner straight after that. He brakes late. Hamilton brakes pretty late for turn 1 anyway. He senses a Max Verstappen little move coming. Max then bleeds off the brakes, lets off the brakes slightly to then be able to get to the apex first. He wins the corner by the steward's book. He wins the corner. It is his corner now. And the next corner coming up, he is the defending car and Hamilton is the attacking. So then the fact that he's then cut the grass doesn't matter because you can do that kind of. If
he
you're not
knows
given
how
enough
to
space.
drive. He adapts his driving style, and I understand why it annoys people, because if you didn't know the rule book, and it is hard to understand, because you look at it as a Formula One fan and a racing fan, and you watch it and go, that's not really fair, is it? But yeah, like you say, like the way he controls the car, he knows exactly what he's doing to make sure that certain bits of the regulations kind of fit what the stewards want. So it makes it almost like they can't give him a penalty, which was weird.
Yeah, the racing rules benefit drivers like Max Verstappen, who are incredibly aggressive and will just dive to the apex first. He made it work for him. I don't like these racing rules. You know, when I look at that sequence of corners, I think Hamilton is well within his rights to have racing room, to not be hit off of the track. And then in my head, and this doesn't matter because this isn't in the racing rules, they're still racing. I don't think Max has won the position because he's dived to the apex first, hit Hamilton, and then cut the corner.
I honestly cannot tell sometimes with Max if that was luck or judgment of him not going into that wall. Because
no, it's complete judgment. You see that he's literally 180 degrees across at one point with his steering wheel to try and counter the slide. Like, I think a lot of drivers are ending up in the wall at that point. But Max, yeah, I'm not going to glaze him, but it was a great car control to not go in the wall. But I'm talking about the things I'm downgrading him for, because I'm giving him an 8 out of 10. The fans gave him a 9. Lewis Hamilton started racing third, finished 8th. Oh dear, this grade.
Oh, this is the tricky one.
This grade's tough. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. And it's a great way of sort of carrying on from what we've been speaking about with Max. I do feel for Hamilton in some ways. I can't give him any higher than a 7 because he definitely had his part to play by getting his penalty. What he did was a penalty. I know some people are going, well, what about Max? What about Charles? Yes, they are separate incidents. Hamilton also deserved the penalty for what happened with going straight over the grass. The move, although I guess, again, if you then think, but then we were sort of judging that by our own opinion, not the racing rules. The racing rules is that Max Verstappen had those corners before that, and Max had the position. Hamilton locks up at turn 4, carries on, gets the position illegally. So I can see why he gets the penalty. It felt incredibly harsh, of course, and a lot of people rooting for him to get a podium. But the emotion aside, it was a penalty. Great qualifying, though, and I genuinely was convinced he was going to get a podium. After even the first couple of corners, I was like, well, he's second on the road at the moment, and then 3 cars just entered the scene from a completely different continent because they were going over the grass.
I will go for a 7 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. I was umming and ahhing about an 8 because I do think he's been shafted by lap 1. I do think he's been really, really shafted there. I think Leclerc should have given him the position back as well. And yeah, that obviously puts him into the clutches of Max, and then they have that moment. He goes over the track, cuts it, doesn't give any time or the place back, and I do think it's a deserved penalty. Yeah, he's made a mistake, and it is disappointing because it really did feel like that was the podium up for grabs and what might have been, but hey, he's going to Brazil now, which we all know he does well at, so maybe that's the time to get the podium.
Just wanted to add one more thing on the Hamilton point as well, is that with the whole kerfuffle he had with Verstappen and the turn 4 and him locking up and going over the grass and things like that, that is absolutely a role that Ferrari had to play in that as well, of communicating to Hamilton, who's just been, very heated moment with
that's
Verstappen.
Very true.
There's been wheel-to-wheel, banging and things like that. Hamilton can't see exactly where his car is, who's won the corner, etc., etc. Ferrari need to analyse that and go, we think you're going to get a penalty if you don't give the position back. Like, I don't really understand why Ferrari haven't. Well,
and then it's in Hamilton's hands if he says, no, this is BS, and ignores it, and then you can kind of say, but yeah, like the
they
team
can see all the offboards and
should
things
give us
like
information.
That, so fingers crossed for him. The fans gave Hamilton a 7 out of 10. Charles Leclerc started the race in second, finished second.
I have gone for a 9 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc, despite his despicable driving at turn 1 and not giving Hamilton the place back. No, I'm joking. But yeah, he should have given that place back. We said it in the race review. I think he was very fortunate not to get a penalty there, but I do think they either didn't see it or it's because it's his teammate, and Hamilton's of course not going to get on the radio and complain about it. And Ferrari aren't going to obviously complain about it either. But I've still got to give him a huge amount of credit. You know, qualifying second and finishing second in a Ferrari that's not the top top two cars, I don't think, this season. They did look obviously quicker here and more suited, but I think he did a great job, which is why I've gone for a 9, but it's not a perfect 10.
I've also gone for a 9 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. How on earth has he managed to cut the corner and keep Hamilton behind him? I do not know. That's down to the FIA to have found that and noted it and probably penalised him. But he got away with it. That's the only sort of like bit of a downgrade for Charles, is that I wasn't a massive fan of the way he bailed out of that corner to go over the grass, when I know he said he hated every metre of that first corner, things like that, and felt like there was going to be a collision. When you actually look at the replay, there was more than enough space for Charles to tuck in and continue through those first few corners. He didn't lose the car, he decided to bail, which is two completely different things in my opinion. So that's the only thing that I'm really downgrading Charles for, because apart from that, finishing second is a phenomenal job. Qualifying second as well, brilliant to see. Ferrari nowhere near McLaren, but were we expecting that in the race? Absolutely not. 9 out of 10 from me to Charles Leclerc. The fans gave him a 9 as well. Oscar Piastri started the race in 7th, finished 5th. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. Still a very awkward weekend for Oscar. Quite telling, I think, as well, in the post-race interviews about how he's saying that he has to drive a different way to what he has done all season. I don't really understand why that's the case. I'm not suggesting anything sinister, but it's a very bizarre situation for Oscar to be in, where he's wondering where the feeling of the car has gone. I can't give him any higher than a 6. He finished 5th. He finished behind Behrman. Yes, the VSC screwed him a little bit to maybe get ahead. But that being said, he was miles off Lando. He did show moments of pace in the race, and it was quite promising, but couldn't make enough progress to finish second. Was easily on the cards, I think, for Oscar, had he shown great pace and qualified a little bit better. So that 5th isn't an absolute disaster. He's still 1 point off the championship. It is a P5. So that's why I've gone for a 6, which I think reflects that.
I've gone for a 6 as well for Oscar Piastri. I still think it's a disastrous weekend for him. I think 5th place in the end is maybe a slight positive in a really poor weekend, because it looked like it could have been even worse. You mentioned about him, surely he's got to slot into P2. I'd argue the same in qualifying, because Lando stuck it on pole by a massive margin as well. The McLaren in Lando's hands looked so dominant. It feels like an easy P2, and of course the championship lead that he's had, he could have kind of afford to do that here and there. But he's obviously lost a huge chunk of points in the last few races, and ended up, now losing the championship lead.
I think Oscar has a huge amount of work to do to try and fight for this championship altogether. The fans gave Oscar a 6 out of 10. Lando Norris started the race in first, finished first.
It's a 10 out of 10 for Lando Norris. It is so easily a 10. So clearly a 10. It was an absolutely phenomenal drive from Lando. I don't think there's been a better drive in his entire career. To take the championship lead. He's had moments where he's dominated races last year, still made the odd mistake here and there and stuff, and people were, I think, giving him maybe unfair grief, but people saying like, oh, he's never had this like completely amazingly perfect weekend. Well, there you go, because it was absolutely phenomenal. Qualifying so dominant. And I do think as well he deserves a huge amount of credit for the way he did turn 1 as well. Covered the inside. It's not an easy place to stay in the lead when you're getting slipstreamed by loads of other cars. He played it perfectly. And then, of course, I think even if he'd lost the lead, he'd have had the pace to win the race, but he didn't lose the lead. And he just made it look so easy. And it's a massive, massive confidence boost.
Best weekend of his career, Lando Norris. It's a 10 out of 10, of course, from me as well. Missed FP1 because a rookie went in. And so you would think maybe
that's
on the
mad
back
to
foot
think, actually. I
compared to
completely
Oscar
forgot
Piastri.
about that.
Maybe he's missed an hour compared to Oscar. Didn't matter whatsoever. Qualifying, yes, Charles Leclerc pipped him in the first round of runs in Q3, but the second one he was light years ahead. So phenomenal Saturday. Sunday, I completely echo your thoughts, and that was going to be one of my major points, is not only just the pace that he showed, but that was probably the best start of his career as well. He absolutely flew off the line. He was miles ahead in that first sort of 100, 200 metres. Of course, everyone slipstreamed. It was 4 wide going into turn 1. But Lando did exactly the right thing. Held the inside line, noticed that there was nobody going to try something daring down the inside, then slowly moves more towards the middle to try and help his racing line into turn 1. Hamilton gets very close to just nipping his right rear tyre for a puncture, but thankfully didn't. And then just drove off. And that was the level of confidence that Lando had this weekend. And how can you bet against him for the championship with a drive like that, with only a few races to go? Brazil, a dry Brazil, I think Lando, McLaren can walk that in a very similar fashion to what we've seen this weekend just gone for the Mexico City Grand Prix. If it's wet, game's on. But it has to be a 10. Phenomenal drive from Lando. And you have to say, and I hate to say it 'cause it's so cliche, that was a champion's drive. It was.
It really was.
That is a world championship worthy drive from Lando. The fans gave him a 10 as well. So who is our P1? Very difficult, actually, because as much as Ollie Behrman did a phenomenal job, I think I have to give it to Lando Norris because of everything I've just said. It was an utterly perfect weekend from start to finish, and I think it would be doing him a disservice if I didn't give him P1. So that's mine.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought it might be an unpopular opinion to go for Lando when literally Ollie Behrman in a Haas has finished P4, but Lando's performance was so good, and I know he's in a very quick car and the best car, but
so was Oscar, finished 5th.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. It was brilliant. It's the best drive of his career. He looked like a champion out there, and we'll wait to see how he does now. Now he's got the championship lead. How he'll deal with that pressure being in the lead of the championship again. But what a way to deliver the championship lead with a drive like that.
And there we go. That is driver ratings done and dusted. Quite a difficult one. I'm sure Brazil will be easy. Good joke.
And a sprint.
Yeah, yeah. So true. Yeah. Tommy, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts are I don't want to have to wait 2 weeks for Brazil because it's just such a banger. And we will be leaving very soon for the Delusion Tour. So
we will.
Get your last tickets while you can.
Exactly. We're flying in a matter of days. P1 Live Delusion Tour, going to North America. Would love to see you there. Tickets are available. You just type in P1 Live Delusion Tour. It will come up. Go and see us, please. We'd love
Sold
to
out
see
San
you.
Francisco and New York now.
New York,
so.
yeah. Some tickets available for the other venues. Would love to see you there. And that is it. See you very soon. Thank you, as always, for being so lovely to us about driver ratings. Who knew numbers could make people so passionate? And we will see you soon. Bye.
Goodbye.
Like the video.
Click.
Click like. Bye.